Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't see you there. Welcome back to another episode. We're going to be talking fungi today, mushrooms for the layman. We've got none other than Dr. Michael Beug. How are you doing today, Mike?
Doing great. Doing great.
That's a German. That's a German Dutch origin name, right?
It's pretty strictly German.
It's pretty
My
strictly German.
my son went to live in the Netherlands because he married a Dutch woman.
You know, I can agree. I European women, best on the planet. Best on the planet. So look, you've had a long career. You've been doing this a long time. You've also brewing wine for 50 years or so. Just a man who's done just about everything that I want to do. Um, you're one of North America's most respected mycologists. You're known for a decades-long commitment to advancing fungal taxonomy, field ecology, and public education. You've, found yourself over 100 species and discovered them yourself and probably named them after you in classical egotistical human fashion.
Not allowed. Not allowed.
Okay, good. A professor emeritus of Evergreen State College, of course, where you've been there more than 30 years teaching chemistry, mycology, environmental science. You even got to the chemistry part of it at some point, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Why not? Also, getting in the lab, getting it under the microscope, and doing that kind of stuff.
Well, after I got my degree, my PhD is in chemistry, but I soon learned that I'd much rather be outside. So I started teaching organic agriculture and mycology and environmental studies, forestry.
So, out of all the stuff that you've done, what's the best? It's just going out and being in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing like it, and turns out they'll pay you for it if you go to school long enough. Um, so, tell me a story about when you first sort of kicked on. Was mycology something that you knew when you were a child? Was it something your parents did, or was it something that sort of crept up on you as you got into academia? When did you say, "Oh, these are cool"?
Well, I was second year graduate student in chemistry. I just gotten married to my wife, another graduate student in chemistry, and somebody gave me a bag of morels. And prior to that, I didn't even see mushrooms in the woods. I didn't know they existed. And I was a very avid steelhead fisherman, and I was out fishing on the Elwha River on the Olympic Peninsula. And there were all these beautiful red mushrooms with these white dots all over the top. And so I picked two big bags of those and took them into the University of Washington. This is 1968. And nobody had a clue what I had. I finally found out, there was a botanist, a mycologist on campus, and I went to him. And what I had is the American form of Amanita muscaria, a very nasty type of hallucinogenic mushroom, but it's the Alice in Wonderland mushroom. I had not eaten them, but I years later wound up doing research both on them, but mostly on the psilocybe mushrooms, the ones that change your mind and literally reprogram your mind if you eat enough of them, which I did once.
And you said you actually later in life, you said you were microdosing, and then you said, "It's not for me." Is that
No, I don't like microdosing. I don't have any interest in marijuana, micro or macro dosing,
yeah.
and using mushrooms once made me far more empathetic to others, far more caring for others, and I haven't felt a need to take a 6-hour trip again. There's too
Sure.
many exciting things to do to be tripping through life.
Right.
I'm enjoying life.
No, and you're the type of guy that when you have a passion and obsession, like you don't generally, that's the drug of choice is learning and stuff like this. But I think that the neuroplasticity thing where they say you take this stuff and it can make you, it made me more empathetic for sure, but also more curious. Did it make you more curious too, you think?
I was already plenty curious.
to a fault.
but I had researched the mushrooms. I held what in this country is a Schedule 1 drug license, one of the few that anybody had in the 1970s and 1980s. It wasn't to eat the mushrooms, but I'd been researching them for their chemistry for 10 years. And after 10 years, my students said I had to quit talking about them until I knew what they were like. So I did them once.
That's
and
that's
it was
fair.
it was quite a trip, but I don't need to do that trip again,
Yeah.
and
What
I'm
I
happy I
may
did.
yeah, what amazed me about the story is that you also didn't have the same a similar effect as other people. And I kind of looked it up and I said, if you have an overactive liver, or say you have a very strong liver, and it can eat metabolize that chemical that's in the psilocin or whatever, that it can that you maybe the response that you had, because you said you ate handfuls of these things.
I ate about enough for a dozen people to have what's called a life-changing trip.
Or what they would call a heroic dose, right?
Yes, that's. We didn't have the term heroic dose in those days. That term was invented in about 2010,
Yeah.
and and that's when the folks, various researchers around the country, started contacting me about my research on the mushrooms, and because in the 70s and 80s, not many people were working on them, and not many people paying attention. But
Mm.
by 2010, the interest was really soaring because we realized that these mushrooms could really uh, effectively treat PTSD, depression, alcohol abuse, help people quit smoking. It's probably the most one of the safest, most interesting medicines out there, and yet it's treated as a drug. Schedule 1 means no medicinal use. Where here we have the safest and the best thing out there. It's the complication is that 6 hour trip.
Right, right. Clear your schedule, folks. Clear
Yep.
your schedule. Um, I think you're right. I always used to say, I've done psychedelics enough. I've blown the doors of perception wide open, and now I sort of have a cold breeze of craziness coming in. So I need to kind of shut the door a little bit and kind of keep it managed. But nevertheless, I believe that. I had also a neuroscientist from John Hopkins. I like to smoke cannabis. It's kept me sane all these years, not just for myself, but for the people around me. I think it's best. Um, but I think, uh, you know, the the therapeutic effects, he says cannabis will make you stupid, and I said, you're probably right. I believe the science is clear, and then you confirmed it on the lecture I saw you give, where you said it's not so good for you.
I felt it was making me stupid. I did try it a little bit, didn't
Yeah.
like it, and tried microdosing because I thought it would be healthy for me. And I also tried microdosing the mushrooms. But what my current excitement is, other mushrooms are incredibly valuable for dealing with cancer and dementia.
Yeah. So let's
And
talk about that. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about what you found. I know that there was you had a skin cancer scare a while back. You went ahead and did some topical ointments. Tell me a story.
well, it actually started in 2010 with my student Paul Stamets, who's become very famous for his company Fungi Perfecti and producing host defense mushrooms. And his mom did not believe in going to the doctor and did not communicate that to her son that she had breast cancer. When she finally did go see an oncologist in Seattle, one breast was 50% larger than the other, and her lymph nodes were swollen to the size of walnuts. And there just happened to be a Schedule 1 drug trial going on for turkey tail mushrooms produced by her son's company, by her son.
Wow.
But they did not know who they were treating, and he did not know his mom was being treated with these mushrooms. And basically, she was given no chance to survive because the cancer was way too advanced. And in just a few weeks, she was released from the hospital and lived another 15 years, dying of old age in the mid 90s,
Wow.
in her 90s. And then at the same time, a friend of ours who knew Paul, uh, her husband was diagnosed with metastasized prostate cancer, and it was his whole body was riddled with it. And in the surgery, they had to take out not only his prostate but part of his bladder and put in a valve so he could go pee. And they refused chemo and they refused radiation, and they decided to try the turkey tail mushrooms that Paul had used on his mom. And he made it 10 years
Wow.
just with those mushrooms. But then his PSA had gone to 300 and his weight had dropped to 100 pounds. And we figured he had a week or two left to live. And some friends of mine in Canada, who I had emailed at Christmas saying that my wife and I had both got pneumonia. And they said, well, they had a cream, a mushroom-based cream that would clear up pneumonia overnight. And they only lived an hour from my friend who by then was dying of prostate cancer. And they rushed the cream to him. And within 6 months, his PSA was down to 5 and his weight was back up to 140, which was his normal body weight. And he made it 4 more years until he died of, they decided to get rid of the cancer and went on chemotherapy. And the chemo promptly killed him.
Oh,
and
man.
his wife is still sad that they tried the chemo thinking she'd still be around. But in 2022, in May, my wife was diagnosed with stage 3B lung cancer. Possibly she might live 18 to 24 months with treatment, but they really gave a very grim outlook. They gave me permission to try medicinal mushrooms with her. I had no idea what would work. I just started her on the turkey tail mushrooms and added some lion's mane and eventually some agarikon. And 2 weeks before she was to start the immunotherapy, we noticed that the swollen lymph node that we had spotted that made her realize that she had lung cancer was shrinking. But we went ahead with the immunotherapy. Within 9 days, she was so sick, I thought she was going to die, and her oncologist took her off that immunotherapy. She recovered in three weeks, and they did another PET CT scan, and she was in remission. I had continued on the mushrooms, but she decided to try another immunotherapy because we didn't really know whether the mushrooms were going to work or not. And that went very badly, very quickly. And so within 3 months of actually it was a total of 4 months of the diagnosis, her doctors turned her management 100% over to me. And she's in full remission right now. But since then, I've been helping people with breast cancer, prostate cancer. I've had skin cancer myself. I've helped people with all 3 major types of skin cancer and clearing them up in a month. Having broken bones heal within 2 weeks with the mushrooms. Having surgery scars heal 4 times as fast as normal, all with the same mushrooms.
And turkey tails. Turkey tails are one of the big ones. What I would name some
one
others
of the
that
big ones.
fit that.
Turkey tails, agarikon, lion's mane, and cordyceps are some of the big ones. But you can't stay on the same thing all the time. So to sort of fool the cancer and mix things up, I occasionally use a mixture called Stamets 7, which is a mixture of 7 different medicinal mushrooms. And then I have different mushroom creams. So and I'm using the mushroom creams because they let the low molecular weight stuff go through your skin. And I'm afraid that if you ingested those same mushrooms, your stomach would destroy a lot of those same compounds. So it's a way of delivering. So I use both mushrooms that we ingest and or mushroom powders that we ingest and creams that you apply because they're going to provide some supplemental chemistry that you don't get just by ingesting the mushrooms. And so I've got the story on how you do it on my website, mushroomsofcascadia.com, and anybody can check that out. And it's purely experimental. I tell everyone I have no idea what's going to happen. Every cancer is different. But so far, I haven't had anyone come back and say, hey, this didn't work at all. What I have had is people like in January 3rd this year, a woman, she was an oncology nurse. She'd had ovarian cancer, stage 4. She had been in remission, and the cancer reemerged over Christmas. We talked for an hour. I convinced her, says, well, it's harmless to do what we were doing. There's not going to be any side effects. It may or may not work. So she ordered the chemicals and she started the mushrooms, I should say. She started on the 6th of January. She had her MRI on the 21st of January. The big growth on the liver that had alarmed her was gone, and the guy who had interpreted the results said, oh, there must have been a mistake when you did the ultra scan. But then 2 days later, I got a text from her saying her liver enzymes had been off the charts in December when they did them, and they were back to normal 15 days after starting the mushrooms. So I'm stunned. In disbelief, I think, would be the best. But I have almost every day somebody contacts me, and I tell them the stories and connect them to my website and consult them, tell them to go to their doctor, make sure they have the doctor's approval, make sure the doctor knows what they're doing, because these mushrooms can interact adversely with certain medicines. And what we learned later was they do interact badly with immunotherapy. We shouldn't have started the immunotherapy, or we should have stayed off the mushrooms. But since the mushrooms were more successful than the predicted immunotherapy, I'm really glad we had the mushrooms.
I guess. Holy cow. And can you imagine? Is there a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to this kind of research? I know this is just emerging, but we don't prioritize research on fungi enough, do we?
No, there's virtually nothing going on. And what funding there was is largely disappearing, especially in the United States. It's still ongoing in Europe, but the universities here have been under attack, and the National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health are all under attack. Grants are pulled, and pseudoscience has taken the place of science in this country.
Yeah,
and
that was a hard blow to take. Yeah.
So, I mean, I got into the mushrooms, after having done the research that led to the banning of DDT in North America.
Right.
And after working on heavy metals and getting an urban smelter shut down that was polluting the city, and working on PCBs. So it was a wide range of environmental problems. But I was tired of having my life at risk and having to doing things secretively. And that's why I switched to mushrooms and agriculture, because I could teach people exciting things that they wanted to hear about. They did not want to hear about all the problems that they were causing from bad environmental practices.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm the opposite. I think I started out my career playing music, wanting to make people happy, and now I do politics almost exclusively because I think I just need to make people miserable and just make them sad, And
well, I mean, I won an essay contest in the 7th grade, statewide contest about conservation. But then in high school, my senior year, it was the challenge of a career in politics. And I belonged to a group called the Political Agitators. And so if you've been following me on Facebook, I mean, my son is terrified of what I'm doing, that pretty soon they're going to be coming for me. Because I'm a student of history. I've had general economics, international economics. I've team taught with World Bank economists. I know how you build and maintain sustainable societies. And that was what most of my teaching was about. Mushrooms was always just sort of a hobby and a sideline. It's turned into a full-time thing now that I'm retired.
Interesting. So you always knew society will undoubtedly always lead in some kind of coercion. As soon as you need to organize people along some lines, that somebody's going to be unhappy.
Oh yeah. In 1972, the work we had started to do on DDT was threatening the Environmental Protection Agency. It had been formed in 1970 by Richard Nixon, a Republican, but there was an insect infestation that was destroying conifer trees here in Washington and Oregon, and they wanted to use DDT against it. And we did the research that showed that the DDT wasn't going to change the outcome. The insects were going to die. They had heavy parasite loads and things like that. So literally the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, with the leading reporter, NBC reporter, flew out to Evergreen to interview us on our research. And then, but the Congress met and said, you either approve DDT or we eliminate the EPA. So I was pretty deep in it. I was testifying before the Senate. My students were testifying at the cabinet level. So yeah, I've seen politics on the other side of the fence.
Oh, brother, you're such a legend, man. It's intense to be around somebody who's been there to do that and to stand before Congress. And we never fully admitted universally that DDT was wrong. I've had people come on here and try to shill for it, and I had to kick them off the show because I thought plant protection meant always shit.
Connected.
Whoops.
I'm on a satellite link. And so,
oh, you're all good.
Okay.
We like all the flaws and interruptions. It makes it authentic. But it's like, it's impossible in academia to also rid yourself of that, capitalist for-profit stuff. You were talking about grants and stuff. The grants are going away. Was it always bad, or is it just now getting worse? Because you have people that are only doing research if it'll pay off.
It's getting a lot worse, and the separation between the haves and the have-nots has increased dramatically. But I was never going to be a teacher. That was the one thing I was positive about. I was going to go into industry and do drug design, and I was all prepared to do it. But a paper I published was taken to prove that DDT could not be causing eggshell thinning. And I was so outraged that I canceled all my industrial interviews. And the paper I published, though, was so important that the journal Biochemistry requested that I publish a note about it in Science. And I submitted that note to Science, and the reviewers rejected it, but republished it word for word under their name.
Oh, you serious?
I am not kidding. And Science refused to say anything about it. Their solution was just to publish my paper. And then my colleagues were saying, well, why are you publishing something that other people have already published? So that's when I decided I would not go to work for a university. I was going to go to work for a small college. And that's why I went to Evergreen State College. It was brand new. I did not have a clue what Evergreen State College was. I only cared that it was in Olympia. And it was real close to the Olympics, where I could go steelhead fishing and salmon fishing, and really close to the Cascades, where I could go skiing. And here I'm going to the most liberal, far out college in existence. There's no grades, there's evaluations. The evaluations are much more informative than grades, by the way. But students can do anything they want. They just have to talk the faculty into it. And the curriculum is designed anew every year. You don't teach the same old course year after year. It's a really exciting place to teach, but I had no clue that's what I was getting into. But it was wonderful.
Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I was actually born in Austin, Texas, in the room next to Linda Bird Johnson. Because it was World War II, and that's where my dad was stationed. But right as soon as the war was over, they moved back to Minnesota, where he was from. But there was no work. So my dad went out to Seattle and wound up working in the aerospace industry in Seattle. So by 1947, I was living in Seattle, and lived for a while in Moses Lake when we were delivering planes, B-52s and B-47s at Moses Lake. And in fact, my first job out of high school, 2 weeks out of high school, I went into the Boeing employment office. I'd been shopping all over town and nobody would hire me. This is the Sputnik era. I took an exam. They'd never seen a perfect score before. And I was hired as an electronics inspector on the first surface to air nuclear missile. And that's 2 weeks out of high school. The next summer, I was hired to work on the Minuteman missile system in Minot, North Dakota, and the third summer, Minuteman in Montana, right on the missiles themselves in the field. And
useful tool, the useful tool of American imperialism. Dr.
so
Michael Beug.
I didn't do the usual route of flipping hamburgers to earn my money
Right?
for
Yeah, I
college.
guess not. I guess not. You killed people in a different way.
No, I didn't kill anybody.
I'm
We
teasing.
didn't, and we've never. Neither of those missiles has ever been fired
Okay,
against an enemy of any kind.
good.
So, but it was the Sputnik era,
Yeah.
and there was all these opportunities that don't exist now. I mean, in between my junior and senior year in high school, I went to summer camp, but it was funded by the National Science Foundation, and it was chemistry, physics, and biology, not your usual summer camp.
I would have loved that. I would have loved that. They don't have that anymore. Yeah.
No, and then my senior year, I was taking second year chemistry, but I also played in the orchestra, the band, the jazz band, was on the golf team. And on Saturdays, I went out to the University of Washington to study nuclear physics.
Get out of town. So you're just painfully curious to a fault where you have to be learning something new.
Well, what else are you going to do?
That's how I feel. I don't know what else to do with my time, and if I don't learn something, so I'm learning Chinese and I'm playing the violin and I'm just doing everything that will keep me busy. So what did you play in jazz band? What instruments did you play?
Well, I played string bass,
The upright.
the upright. Yeah,
Okay.
and then when I went to Harvey Mudd College as an undergraduate, I started with a chemistry scholarship, and then I got an aeronautics scholarship for my last 2 years, and got my flying lessons from I learned years later that my instructor and her husband, she had won a bronze. She had been in the 1936 Berlin Olympics and had flown and then afterwards trained as a pilot, and had flown every single fighter and bomber made by this country. And she just died this year at 104, and she was still flying at 103 and a half, and she last flew a P-51, the fastest prop fighter ever built, at 98 years old. And she took it up to altitude and put it in a barrel roll all the way across LA till she was out over the ocean, leveled it out, and came back and landed it. This is my background. It's a little different. But I did have
Oh
a
my
music
God.
scholarship from Pomona College, and I was on the Claremont Men's College golf team.
And how'd you like that? Golf, fairly relaxing sport. What'd you think?
Well, I kept wrapping my clubs around the trees because I'd get angry when I missed a shot, and I decided that playing golf, it was a waste of good environmental time, good outdoor time.
I've been talking to you 30 minutes. I'm like, this guy's got a bit of a hot streak, I think.
Well, anyway.
I do too. I mean, if I don't, I'm constantly watching the politics. I'm already angry. So
yeah,
half the time I'm learning about all the stuff. The next I'm trying to find a way to relax. So you're, I would assume you're most relaxed when you're out foraging for mushrooms. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that your go-to?
That's my cathedral. That's my church. Anyone's welcome in my church. I take a wide range of people out there and show them mushrooms, teach them about mushrooms. Yeah, but I get a thrill out of teaching.
Yeah.
The thing I thought I would never do.
Yeah, you end up having to do. Yeah. Well, you're a wealth of information, and once you get to the echelon that you're on, you absolutely have to tell people. Otherwise, what are you going to do with all that knowledge? So you look, your research spans a wide variety of fungal taxa. So how do you prioritize the species or genera to study? What do you what motivates you most? What how do you get the focus?
Well, first of all, I'm the toxicologist for the North American Mycological Association. So if I suspect the mushroom has a toxin in it, and I'll be studying those and working on those. And then it's basically, I've never actually had a course in mycology. I did take a non-credit evening class when I was in graduate school, but I've had a chance to work in the labs of some of the leading mycologists in the country and get to know through them. But if somebody's doing a research project and they want to know, for example, in 2008, Dr. Emeriti at the University of Washington asked me if there were any oak-associated Cortinarius species, and because I live in an oak region where we don't have a lot of oaks in Washington State, and I said, well, I'd never seen any, but I'd go look, and I went out that day, and he just happened to call at the right time, a year. It was November. I just finished the wine harvest. Earlier than November, there wouldn't have been any mushrooms under the oaks. And I found 5 different species. I photographed them, did the microscopy, and sent him the information. And I get an email back from him. He says, well, those are 5 new species. So I went out to my favorite winery the next week, and the owner happens to love mushrooms. And he says, I've got all these big, really beautiful, showy, they're gorgeous mushrooms, but I can't find them in the book. So I gathered about 5 species from his woods at his vineyard and winery, and I worked those up and sent them to Dr. Emeriti. He says, yep, those are all different than the ones you sent last night, and they're all new. And in the first year, I only found 1 mushroom that already had a name, that was a Cortinarius. And we're talking about mushrooms that are, like that and like that. They're not just little mushrooms, they're the size of cantaloupes and the size of softballs, and some of them were small. And how did it get all this time and nobody had noticed these things?
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it just fascinated me.
So there's so much insane low-hanging fruit when it comes to everything regarding mushrooms. There's just
That's
it's
right.
it's like the bottom of the ocean. We don't really know anything about it, and we're just now starting to get it. And if it wasn't for people like you, we wouldn't know. So what about, the ecological roles? Like obviously they're in forests, but they're also in urban areas. What are what are they doing, and what are like they have ecological roles breaking things down? Uh, what can you name a few examples of some of the most interesting uh, uh, roles that they have?
Well, I'll start with the most fundamental role. Until mushrooms came ashore and combined with some algae that also came inshore, the marine fungi, there was no soil. And that meant there was no plants, there were no land animals. So in the beginning, there was mushrooms. And without them, nothing ever would have evolved. We wouldn't be talking to each other.
Really?
And for a long time, the mushrooms, though, plants evolved and they grew and they fell and they decayed, but the mushrooms couldn't eat the plants. And that's why we have all the coal and all the oil.
Ah,
And then mushrooms evolved that were able to eat cellulose, some of them, and others that, would decompose lignins. So then we could begin to decompose woody material and build up richer soils. And that allowed the evolution of flowering plants, because the original. And so the whole thing, there's mushrooms there. And right now, if we eliminated all the fungi, none of the tree, there are very few trees that don't require an association with mushrooms to thrive. Orchids require an association with mushrooms to grow at all. Then there are things in the soil that don't ever produce a fungus that we see above ground, but they do produce a fruiting body in the ground, but it's full of spores, and they're very important to grasslands. And of course,
Hmm.
there's the evolution of truffles. There are some of those are really delicious, some of them are really bland, but the evolution truffles can grow underground, and they attract critters to eat them to spread the spores. And the truffles that we value, the critter that they really are good at attracting is both pigs and humans, because they produce the male sex pheromone that people find very attractive and go after. So, but
I don't want that on my spaghetti, please. I really don't.
but I've I've only gotten to go truffling once with a trained truffle dog, and
Uh,
we we flavored butter and cheese, and we just instead on our spaghetti all we had was grated truffle cheese, some truffle butter, and then it was some of the most incredible meals just from a little bit, tiny bit of truffle. 2 ounces of truffles, I was able to flavor uh, a total of 6 gallons of cheeses and avocados and raw eggs and
wow.
pounds of butter. And I ate off of those 2 ounces of truffles that we got on that guided trip for 2 years. So truffles are expensive, but they're really fabulous
Wow.
and delicious.
I suppose very potent as well.
Oh yeah, but they don't. You use so little that they don't have any effect on you medicinally. But we do.
Yeah, so what's the medicinal part of it, of the truffle?
Well, negligible. The
Negligible.
things I go after for medicinal use, particularly the mushrooms that are popular in Asia, like shiitake and and some of the boletes. If you eat mushrooms, and I don't include in that list the agaricus you commonly buy in the store, they're okay. But if you eat a good Asian type mushrooms, and the mushrooms also that are popular in Germany and in Russia, you eat those at least 3 days a week, you're going to live longer, have much less dementia, and very much lowered levels of Parkinson's. So I tell people, even if you don't get into the mushroom powders and stuff to deal with cancer, eat mushrooms well cooked, not raw, 3 days a week. And things like
Okay.
fifferlings, the chanterelles, and but lion's mane
You
is one of the very best. In fact, the 2 new mushrooms that I found this week, I had spotted a lion's mane. Now that's a rare mushroom. It's in Germany, it's in England, but it's red listed in. But I at where my third of a mile long driveway joins the gravel road up to my house on my neighbor's property. We were talking, I was telling her about lion's mane, and I look 50 feet up an oak tree, and there's one up there 50 feet up. But so we were walking over by the tree to get a better look at it, and I was telling her how important it was for her health. And then I see I'd been hunting all day, and I hadn't found a single interesting mushroom, just little brown, what I call little brown jobbies. And nothing I got excited about. And here were 2 mushrooms I didn't recognize. I took them back and did the microscopy and worked them up. 2 new species. But I wouldn't have even found those had we not walked over to look at that lion's mane. And then I tried to figure
unbelievable.
out how I was going to get it down, because the day before I'd gotten one down, but it was 30 feet up the tree. And the guy that owned that tree had a ladder that would extend 30 feet. And he had the ladder when I went up. Well, I climbed up and cut it down. But I've cooked that up. That'll be enough for about 10 good mushroom meals, because it weighed about
Yeah.
4 pounds, just one mushroom.
Gee whiz. Yeah, and it's funny, a lot of the people it hasn't caught on yet. People don't go for the lion's mane, maybe too exotic for them, but they'll happily give it to you. Like you cut it, yeah, come cut this thing off my tree and you can eat it or whatever. People don't really realize how good they are.
You slice it like a breakfast ham and saute it in butter and oil till it's lightly browned on both sides and then salted. But you can also chop it up and make imitation crab cakes, and it tastes very
Oh,
much like crab.
oh my God, I gotta try that now.
They
Lion's
are
mane,
so good.
I can't find them. I haven't seen them in the wild here, but I'm just, it's just a matter of time, I hope. But do they exist in Europe? Can I find a lion's mane?
Yeah, they're red listed.
What's that
That
mean?
they're not common,
Ah,
and
okay.
red listed they're means they're protected. So I don't know what the here they're not, but it, it's only about one. I have to look at about 1,000 oak trees to find one lion's mane.
Hmm.
But then once I find a tree that it grows on, often it'll grow on it for many different years. But oak trees, it's a parasite, but oak trees fight back. And I've had trees only have lion's mane once, and then after they occur on a wound where a branch had broken.
Hmm.
But then the tree will heal over the branch and never grow another lion's mane.
Eee.
So, but sometimes if the tree is really weak, the lion's mane wins, and you'll be able to get lion's mane off that same tree year after year.
How do the lion's mane do? Or do they sporulate easily, or they obviously are not common, so they're not hard workers when it comes to reproducing.
Well, they sporulate easily, but the oak trees and the maple trees and the birch trees that they grow on have good defenses,
Ah, okay.
and don't let and they only can attack where the tree is wounded, and they'll only kill the tree if the tree is otherwise weakened, like there's a polypore on its roots growing
Hmm.
and killing it already. Then the lion's mane will go in and do its share of the killing,
Interesting.
but it's not a powerful uh, killer. It's a
Are
weak.
Do some of these mushrooms fight each other for like because we have downed birch trees they love the polypores love the dead birch trees. Uh, are some fungi would they fight each other over territory and or how's that work?
Well, several things happen. You will have complete competing mycelium, and you'll often, if you cut a piece of wood, you know, and you're making furniture, there's what we call spalted wood that has these beautiful patterns in it. That's when two
Okay.
different fungi have been fighting each other, and those black spalting lines are
Ah,
are the defenses.
wild. Okay. It's so cool. I have so many questions that I'll never. We're already over time, but then it was like I also saw these beautiful black fungi that look like how worm poop looks
Yeah.
like on the surface of the soil. It's just this black stuff on the stump, and it's all like silly string and stuff. What is that?
Is it jelly like or is it hard?
It's hard.
Okay. Then that could be a mushroom that a jelly mushroom likes to eat. And when that jelly mushroom eats that mushroom, it produces, I mean, it's the jelly mushroom originally is a yeast that it crawls along the branch like a slug, and it sees that black carbon ball, gets on it, and then it turns into something that looks like about a softball sized cauliflower, but it's jelly like.
Interesting.
And
Huh.
if you harvest that, I buy Chinese harvested. They grow them intentionally. They're called Chinese snow fungi, and that's what I use as the base for the creams, because it's actually better than hyaluronic acid as a skin moisturizer. But it also, because it's a good skin moisturizer, it also is a good way to carry the desirable fungal components into your body, and it itself is an anti-cancer sunscreen, but it requires on eating those little black balls that you see.
Interesting. Oh my God. Yeah. Um, That's and I think the medicinal, topical, or even in capsule form or whatever, internal, external, this has to be really explored more, right? For all this
Oh yeah,
fungi
oh
related.
yeah. So
Um,
I'm now on the Medicinal Mushroom Committee of the North American Mycological Association, and we're preparing a questionnaire that we will be releasing hopefully by early next year to find out who's eating what mushroom, how much, why are they eating it, and what are they seeing as a result, if they're seeing anything. And so I know there's a lot of other people. There's close to 1 million people now who have seen Paul Stamets' TED Med talk about his mother. And as a
yeah.
result of that, there's a lot of people experimenting with turkey tail fungi. And so what are they learning? I want to know if they found things that everything I've tried works so far, and I'm quite excited. But are there other things that work equally well, or some things that work better? Are there some things I'm getting a lot of questions about nerve damage? I've got a damaged nerve from an injury back when I was in college, and I would love to. For a long time it didn't bother me, but now that I'm no longer young and vigorous in my 80s, um, there's a tingling in my arm, and I would love to get rid of that. But so far, nothing I've tried touches it. But maybe
Hmm.
somebody somewhere knows something. So we're working on this. Now this will just cover it'll cover all of North America. We're not going to try and cover Europe because of language difficulties.
Right.
But we're working with an experienced
Yeah, your German's great, Michael. You
yeah, but but Polish not so much, and
oh, right.
Italian and
Oh,
French. I know a little French, but very little, and not phrases I'm going to repeat here on TV or wherever.
uh, yeah. Je ne sais pas. Oh, and I was going to ask you before we go because my wife wanted me to ask you chaga.
Oh,
Can you tell me a little bit about the big chaga craze going on?
yeah, I'm not crazy about chaga. If
Tell me a story. Okay.
if you overuse it, it's got a lot of oxalic acid in it, and there's been one death so far where somebody actually destroyed their kidneys because the oxalic acid makes these sharp needle-like structures that that interfere with the kidney function, and so you can die from it. You can get sick from it, and the chaga is really uh, not a fungus per se. It's a growth on the tree, and so a lot of it, a lot of the active ingredient is from the betulinic acid that's converted to betulin by the fungus. But a long-lived tree like that has plenty of time to absorb uh, radioisotopes out of the atmosphere and to absorb heavy metals. And so turkey tails, in contrast, live 1 year, but chaga is long
Mm.
lived. And so you have a
Uh,
long time to build up these things and the high oxalic acid. And it's highly variable. Some chaga is not as dangerous as others. But, and I've seen a lot of people swear by it and really thrilled by it, but nobody talks about watching tumors disappear in 2 or 3 weeks. And that's what I'm seeing with the mushrooms I'm using.
yeah. Um, again, turkey tails. What was the other one?
Agarikon, which
Agaricon.
Agarikon, which is
Okay.
and what lion's mane and
Lion's
cordyceps are the
mane.
ones I'm most excited about. But there are at least 300 known medicinally important fungi. It,
Uh,
it,
so what's with the cordyceps though? What specifically? Obviously, this is the famous one where the ant and the thing comes out of the
right.
ant's head. What what medicinally is what's going on there?
Uh, Nerve regeneration.
Okay.
and but they can have some very, I've been reticent to use them because they can have some very potent effects on the heart. And, but depending on what your problem is, that's either desirable or not desirable in terms of how your heart is working. So
True.
that's one you have to be very careful about with. Where I haven't seen any evidence that you have to be careful about turkey tail, lion's mane, or agarikon. Now, agaricon's been known for a long time. Its name has changed a lot. That's a common name, but it was used against malaria in the 1920s and 1930s. It's very, very bitter. So you take it in a capsule when you take it. But the other thing that people don't realize that's really important is Paul Stamets has collected, and all he needs to do, the plant, Garicum fungus will live for 50 or 100 years. He doesn't need to harvest the fungus. He just needs the tiniest little piece, and then he grows the mycelium in big culture vats. But in hundreds of different collections, there's one collection that's way more potent than all the others. The same is true of the turkey tail mycelium product that he sells. His science team has studied hundreds of different collections, probably thousands of different collections of turkey tail, because it's common, to find a really potent one. It's the same way we developed penicillin. There was one, I think it was a cantaloupe from the Midwest that had penicillin is an ascomycete, but normally it doesn't produce a lot of penicillin. But in this cantaloupe, there was one that produced way more than any other type. And so that's all of our penicillin comes from that discovery.
That's how we made corgis so short, just selectively making them
Yeah,
shorter.
and that's
Find the
and
shortest one.
that's has a lot to do with how the Allies defeated Germany, by the way, because Germany didn't have the penicillin. It was a big, it had a
Oh,
big role in World War II.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
The Nazis did, however, in my neighborhood, they brought the raccoon over. The Nazis thought this would be a good idea to bring the raccoon from North America and just release it into the German wildlife to make it more biodiverse.
yeah,
And now we have raccoons that are sort of lost and don't speak German. They don't know why they're here.
yeah.
um,
Okay,
sorry, non sequitur.
yeah.
Um, um, I guess one more question, then we'll let you go. You got to be careful with some of the trees. If a certain fungi is growing on a certain kind of tree, you can't eat it. But if it's growing on other trees, this is what I've been hearing.
Not true.
What? Not true. Okay, because I'm myself, for every forager who's out there right now. Um, can you give us just a rundown of the basics, what to look out for? I have too many questions. You'll have to come back, but for now,
What what happens mostly is on a different tree, it's a different fungus. It's not the same mushroom. It just looks similar. And
okay. So
so
they all have preferences.
yeah, yeah. Chaga primarily it will grow on a few things other than birch, but there's a lot of things that look like chaga on, say, various things in the prunus family. And those things are nasty if you eat them. I mean, you eat them, you make a tea out of them if you make a concoction. They're woody, see, but so depending on the tree, you can have two different mushrooms that look the same, but if you do the DNA, you'll find out they're different. Now there are like certain oyster mushrooms don't really care what they grow on. They'll they'll grow on coffee grounds or on a tree and a lot of different kinds of trees, but other oyster mushrooms are very specific. They only grow on something in the genus Populus, for example.
Hmm.
But some of the oyster mushrooms that are being cultivated and escape into the wild are not choosy about what they grow on. And they're becoming invasive, just like the raccoon did in Germany when the Germans brought it over. So introducing a non-native can have some very interesting effects, usually not desirable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, you'll have to come back and do this again because I still had plenty of questions about how the testing works, and your guy who you're always bringing mushrooms to. How does he discern between the two? But look, it was really nice to have you. You're a legend in the field, and apparently just all around amazing human being who's done everything. um, I got big shoes to fill here. I gotta work extra hard just because of you. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much. This has been very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I come with the jokes. I have no idea what I'm doing, but you, my friend, you have all the knowledge, and I thank you for teaching me something today.
And just a few of the
Um,
jokes.
yeah. Anything you want to tell the people before you go? Where to find you? What you're doing next?
Well, you go to my website, which is updated every month, www.mushroomsofcascadia.com. It's got a wide range of educational materials, a wide range of uh, information about changes and additions to the book I wrote, Mushrooms of Cascadia, an illustrated key. I have written the only key ever written that's illustrated to fungi anywhere in the world. And by putting in distribution information, I intended it to be useful in England, France, Germany, Norway, Russia, China, Japan, Eastern. I mean, many of the mushrooms I have and I cover 1,300 species, which is double what most books cover and quadruple what many books cover. So take a look at that
And
key.
the blurbs on the book, Paul Stamets, of course, Paul Stamets was a student of this man that you're seeing on the screen. Um, Ascomyceti, fungi of North America, and mushrooms of Cascadia. Some of his work. Check it out. The books, they're amazing. So you promise you'll come back?
Love to.
All right. We'll say goodbye for now. We'll talk right after this. Hey, goodbye in TV land. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.